Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's OWASP Stockholm presentation. And in a short while, we'll be having Stefania Chaplin from GitLab talking to us. But before that, I'd like to introduce Chaplin from Center. Center is our host tonight. They're the ones giving us this lovely place to use and providing refreshments and stuff. So, Kalle, if you could go and say a few words about our sponsor.
Yeah, a big part of you. I'm trying to breathe the music here. Welcome to Center. I have a cool presentation, which unfortunately will be a bit destroyed. Like that. So in honor of the W in OWASP, I built the presentation in the web in HTML and CSS. Let's see how that works. It's kind of experimental. I have a few more animated logotypes I built during an animated logotype competition that we had here at the office. I'm just going to do one more. But unfortunately, I cannot stand here and show you animated logos all evening, even though I would like to do that. Instead, I'm going to try to explain what kind of a company that Center is. We started in our humble beginnings in the Lord's year of 1998, somewhere around here, I think. This is in Uppsala, but that was a very small office, so eventually we moved here. Well, not the entire house, but at least a part of it. But then eventually we realized that we couldn't stay in Uppsala, so we moved to Stockholm, here. Not actually this club, but in fact, just above this club, we were sitting, and this was crazily loud music, which was kind of hard for the people who work in night shift at our place. They got like hearing damages from this. But it was a fun year, but eventually we realized we couldn't be there either, so we moved here, which was the quite opposite. In fact, this is the building that we resided in at that point, which was fun, but very quiet. So instead we moved here, right next to the mosque. There's our office. That was nice, but eventually we outgrew that as well. And now we're here at Tobaksmonopolet, which is the house that Swedish tobacco monopoly built in order to store tobacco almost 100 years ago. This is why this house looks so very strange with these huge
unique
pillars.
Not strange, unique.
Yeah, it's very unique. Eventually they built the home through the house so they can actually be here. It's been a fun few years since I started, like, I don't know, 16 years ago. When I started this company, it was about 20 people. At this time last year, I think we grew to 100 people. And today I have 699,000 colleagues. Because a year ago we got acquired by Accenture, and that is a company that is freaking huge, with consultants all over the world. And I can't really speak for what everyone in Accenture is doing because they're doing everything. But at our little part of Accenture Center, we play a lot of Bomberman in the cinema there that we have. We inherited that after the previous guest here. But we also work quite hard when it comes to it. So what do we work with? With security. But not that kind of security, but this kind of security, IT security. And we do this in mainly 3 different areas. We have people doing monitoring of customer systems as a managed security service. And they monitor our customers' networks and hosts for intrusions, and they call and wake somebody up in the middle of the night to tell them that they're hacked. It's a sad story. And then we also have the information security consultants. They help our customers through various certification processes and compliance issues and certify them to ISO 27000 and what have you not. And then we also have the technical security, which is the part, of course, that I myself have been working in most of my career. We do penetration testing, security advisories, some education for developers, helping people with development processes, security audits and stuff like that. That is about all that I intend to say. If you want to talk some more about it, then just stay around after it's done and then we'll have a chat. Or if you don't want to chat about this, then we'll have a chat about something else. We have a nice balcony, we have a cool cinema, and yeah, just hang around. And I'm done, but I just added one more animation. And now I'll leave it to Stefania. Thank you.
Who has used GitLab before? Raise your hands. Okay, pretty much most of you, awesome. And who has used GitLab security features before? Okay, so I got a half from over there, perfect. Okay, cool. So then hopefully, this should be interesting and useful. So before I jump into the demo part, I'm just going to talk you through a couple of slides. Okay, now it's working. So agenda. I'm going to talk a little bit about me. Who am I? Managing vulnerabilities, everyone's favorite job, right? Security workflows, then and now. A demo, and then summary and Q&A. So a little bit about me. I am a solutions architect at GitLab. You can find me on various places. I live in London. I'm really into yoga. I'm really into plants. I've got like my nice collection there. My friend's looking after them right now. I'm part of OWASP DevSecOps. So if you haven't checked it out, it's another OWASP project and it's awesome. I'm very much about diversity and women in tech. So if you want to talk to me about any of that stuff and not GitLab, happy to have the conversation as well. So managing vulnerabilities. I'm going to talk you through 2 use cases. So what happens when you find 10,000 vulnerabilities right at the end of the software development lifecycle? It's not really a good place to be. You kind of end up with, wow, this person is kind of drowning. He's at least got 1 hand or 2 hands up. But what about if you empower your developers to deal with each vulnerability? Yeah.
Can I ask you, what is standing SDLC?
Oh, software development lifecycle.
Okay, I see.
So what if you empower developers to deal with each one or each vulnerability at the point where it's introduced? So some of you may know this as shift left. And what are we trying to do? So we've got our developers, we've got our AppSec, and we want them to collaborate. We want them to work together. I used to be a developer, and now I work in AppSec, and we really want to be friends. And we don't want AppSec to be the bad guy. We really want to empower our developers to fix vulnerabilities when they're introduced. So shift left, there are some common myths associated with it. And there's 2 I'm going to highlight because you do not want to end up like this. So asking developers to run security scans outside of their traditional workflow. If you have security as a faraway place, that's not very helpful. Speaking from experience as a developer, we like our tools, we like to stay in them, and ideally we want to try and integrate security into existing workflows. The second one, expecting developers to understand what tools to run when and how to interpret the results. So I know a lot of developers, and I was in a park walking along with one, and I said to him, do you know what username enumeration is? And then he started talking about types and enum and all this, and I'm like, not quite. That is when you're logging in, and if it tells you, oh, your password's incorrect, that is a vulnerability, because then someone will know the username is correct and then they can start brute forcing. So even stuff like the way that security talk about these bugs can be very unfamiliar to developers. So we want them to be able to understand this as well. So this is kind of your old school workflow. It's fairly waterfall. Commit your code, it goes into CI, so your build, continuous integration. Then it's deployed, maybe to a test environment. Maybe you have some dynamic or infrastructure application testing. The security team comes in, dismiss or create 10,000 issues, goes into a ticketing system and back to developers, at which point the developers are like, we worked on this ages ago. What? No, that's a false positive. That was from the guy that left before. It's not my problem, which isn't where we want to be. So where do we want to be? We start to shift left and separate. So you're still going to commit your code. Once it is in the feature branch in CI, then we have something called a review app that's an ephemeral instance, so a live running version of your application, because then you can do all the testing, including like API fuzzing, dynamic application security testing. And then your developer, so before they've deployed and before it's in production, the developer has the opportunity to dismiss or create the issues and to see and to fix any problems they may have introduced. Once they are happy with their results, then they can start to deploy, and you end up with the security view. They go in, they have their view, and then they can dismiss or create issues as well. So you're really empowering your developers by shifting left. Left would be that direction. So here's an example DevOps pipeline within GitLab, the one DevOps platform. You can do a little bit of everything. You have end-to-end. So whether you're at the beginning and you're doing project management, issue tracking, looking at epics, milestones, Once you have an issue, you can then create feature branches so developers can then push the code, they can run the tests, they can iterate. So for example, if a developer accidentally introduces an old version of log4j, they can realize instantly and not have to go through the potential embarrassment of pushing it to production and then having all of that effect. Once the developer's happy, they can then accept the merge back to the feature branch and release and deploy. So it's really, like I say, about empowering the developer by giving them security results in their existing workflow. So DevSecOps, here you have the single platform. So I mentioned a couple of these stages before. I'm really going to be focusing on two. So protect and, oh yeah, I've got a clicker, well, I have a red light, protect and secure. And what that means to GitLab. So secure is your, what a lot of people probably know as application security in terms of looking at static code, secret detection, dynamic application security testing, fuzz testing, API fuzzing, dependency scanning, also looking at the licenses of those dependencies, and infrastructure as code and kind of vulnerability management within that. So you want to, that's to the developers, you want to shift that security left. We also have protect. This is more about SecOps. So for example, container scanning and policy orchestration as well. And I'll be showing these in the demo. The other thing worth noting is compliance, especially if you are working for a financial company. Compliance can be a bit of a headache if you don't have a tool that can automate it for you. So what can we do? We can define and manage. So we have settings to meet specific compliance controls because different industries have different compliance they need to adhere to. For example, finance, PCI is one of the bigger ones. Reporting. Imagine having a little button so you could just export these reports all in one place and it could cover your entire DevOps pipeline. You don't want to have to build it yourself. And finally, traceability. This is especially important. In the world we live in, where anyone can be hacked, recently in the UK, one of my favorite childhood snacks companies got hacked by ransomware. So anyone who was looking for hula hoops or McCoys could not find them. I actually spoke to someone I used to work with who has an autistic son, and then he could not find these crisps for his son. And his son was like, "Daddy, this is not okay." So I mean, when they're targeting, the childhood snacks, it's not okay. So with audit events, you can at least see who's doing what, and then, do incident management as part of that. So when it is done well, you can have a party. You can scan all code every time because actually the more you scan, smaller iterations, smaller batch size, that's going to have a positive effect because if you're pushing 500 changes and it breaks, ouch. If you're pushing 3 changes and it breaks, that is a lot more manageable. So what happens for your developer? It's seamless. You've got the whole experience, which I'll be showing you in a minute, and using fewer tools from project management, developer, security, and environment management as well. And you end up with all of your team on the same interface, on the same page, and bonus, happy compliance auditors. So where we want to get to, bullseye, obviously, efficiencies. Improving operational efficiency, especially if you're trying to track metrics across a 20 tool chain, you're going to start losing things in manual processes. You're going to start losing data. You're going to have someone who needs to be there every 3 hours to click a button and nobody wants to be that person. So we really want to improve operational efficiencies. Compliance to policy, which I've talked about compliance a bit. Reduced security exposure. We talk a lot about false positives. So that is when there is a problem, it isn't actually a problem. Maybe your security tool is a bit too happy and it's like, there's a problem. But on the opposite side, what you really don't want is a false negative, because if you've got an app and it's like, everything's fine, but actually bad vulnerabilities, that is a real false negative. There are some security scanners that charge per scan, per app. You really want something that charges per user and gives you unlimited usage, or as much usage as you can handle. In terms of business impact, if you haven't, this is my suggested reading list. To be fair, I only read the last books kind of in the last couple of years, but Gene Kim is a famous author who wrote the Phoenix Project, was a part of Accelerate and the Unicorn Project. Both the Phoenix Project and the Unicorn Project are fictitious books written from the perspective, like the Phoenix Project, a guy working in ops comes to work and everything is going wrong. And he has to deal with the annoying security guy, the developers who don't want to do anything, the CMO who is like hassling for the product release because she's already written the press release. So it's a really good book I'd recommend, and similar with the Unicorn. Accelerate was a very interesting book because instead what they did is they surveyed, I think it was 2,000 or 3,000 companies, from like startups, so like 5 users, to over tens of thousands of users. And they tried to figure out what makes elite performers so good. Why are some people delivering software better than others? So one of the ways was improved information flow. So whether that's collaboration, so that can be, interpersonal communication, also data flow. If you're using 20 different tools for all these processes, how likely is it that you can identify a commit to which environment it's in? If you've got, 5 different interlinks in the web. Another thing Accelerate talks about, it's quite a lot about people in terms of culture drivers. So this is also something that Deming said about, and this was back in the kind of 70s, about culture of fear. So if you have a culture of fear and everyone's like, no, if you make a mistake, you get fired, guess what? No one wants to make mistakes. The reality is everyone makes mistakes. So when you have a failure in the system, do you treat it as heads will roll, or do you treat it as an opportunity to improve the system? This can lead to job satisfaction, one of the flows of DevOps. If I can do my job, this was actually one of my favorite things in the Unicorn Project. I'm not going to spoil it, but it took her at least a third of the book before she could just run one build on the application. And it was multiple support tickets and chasing loads of different people. So having a state of flow where you can actually do your job makes a difference. Reduces team burnout, especially in the age of COVID and lockdown and what we've all been through in the last 2 years. I think everyone has at least some level of burnout at some level. So you really don't want deployment pain to be leading to that. And also unplanned work. So this is one of the ones, SRE, Site Reliability Engineering. There's a great paper by Google. And they talk about, we want to improve the system. You're never going to stop the pager from going off. But, trying to make it better. I spend a lot of time at surf and yoga retreats, and I was chatting to my yoga teacher on the beach about SRE because the fire alarm would go off every 3 weeks, about 2 in the morning. And I said to her, I was like, hey, if you fix the fire alarm, it won't go off every 3 weeks because the fire alarm, in essence, was unplanned work, even if it was regular. Disclaimer, the fire alarm has now been fixed. And when you have all these, you can lead to improved software delivery performance, but also organizational performance as well. Because if you can listen to your customers and you can deliver better software faster, you're going to start to gain market share. You're going to have happy customers. Happy customers, more money, everyone's happy. So now I am going to start demo time. Gonna move this, sit on my little stool, and then I can put that down there. So, okay, cool. So I am in a GitLab project. Oh, I'm actually in a group right now. So a little disclaimer, I was actually talking with Shane about it a week ago. Spring Shell from a few weeks ago, I had to wipe my entire demo environment. So right now I have 3 environments that I'm kind of sticking together for a cohesive demo. So if I do a little bit of clicking, that will be why. So GitLab. Most people are familiar with the source code repository. I'm not going to go too much into that because I think everyone is familiar with the concept of Git. So I'm going to talk about an idea. So I have an idea for this project. It's a Node.js application. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an issue. So for example, if you're doing project management, maybe you would do something like this in Jira. And what I'm going to do is I am going to make my font bigger. So it's a CSS change, and I'm going to suggest maybe 28 pixels. I can also assign people, select epics, milestones, etc. I'm going to create the issue. And this is what I mentioned before. Maybe I want to add labels, for example, if this was a security bug. I can also collaborate. I can be like, hey, great idea. I could also add people. So this is an instance where we can start, collaborating within the tool. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually make the change. So I'm going to create a merge request. So this will create a feature branch. So all of a sudden, developers are no longer part of, the master, the production branch. They are able to, have a little sandbox. And what's important is get security scanning as part of this. So I'm going to do some code. We have something called the Web IDE. This is actually about to be updated. We're going to actually have VS Code within GitLab Online. If you are a developer and you want to use your own IDE and log in remotely, that is totally fine as well. And let me go into my style sheet, and I'm going to change to 28 pics. I'm going to create my commit. You can see it's in a different branch. And what happens now will happen, takes about 5-10 seconds. Oh, it's taken less. It creates a pipeline. So this is where you're going to start getting your security scanning, and I can talk you through what we're seeing. So first we have build. GitLab is clever. It actually figures out what you're building. At no point did I tell it was a JavaScript app. And now you're starting to have your added security. So whether you're looking at the code the developer has written, the static code, whether you're looking at the open source components, for example, anything that comes from NPM, the licenses associated with those scanners. There was a famous instance with an open source license. An airline company was using it to print their boarding pass. The open source license changed their license, so basically you had to pay to distribute it, and they put a little micro dot. And because they were using it for the boarding passes, the airline company got a little knock on the door and quite a large bill. We talk about security a lot, but especially with licenses and compliance, it is an area to be aware of. We can do container scanning, secret detection, see if you're accidentally leaking any API keys. I'm not going to make people raise their hands if they've had to ever done that, but it would maybe be me. And then move over to the other side of the screen. So review, that's what I mentioned before. That's an ephemeral instance. So then you have a developer as part of their commit now has a running live application. So we can then hit requests and start doing dynamic application security testing against it. I've got some here, browser performance. This is just a intermediary app I might have here. Let's go to production. Let's do incremental rollout, maybe 10%, 25, 50, etc. But what you can see is a pipeline as part of a code commit with security added in. So let me go, here's one I made earlier, and I have to remember which environment it's in, so bear with me. I think it's in this one. So, okay, it's not in this one. It's going to be in this one. Zoom in so you can actually see. So on a good day, what we have here is now the pipeline is complete. And we can see, good news is my pipeline has worked. There aren't any additional problems. But say if there had been a problem, right here, this is where I would see, for example, you've introduced security bugs. There may be license issues. And also, if we go back to the merge request, so my merge request was making the font bigger. It's a bit boring. I'm actually going to go to, there's another one I made earlier. So this is the merge request I looked at before, in terms of this is another great place where I can collaborate, see what's going on. And we've got some security approvals as parts of it, because it's great to have developers being able to, commit to production as much as they want. But what happens when they start introducing vulnerabilities? So maybe we have some approval rules as part of that, which I can show you in a minute. We can also see, license compliance. Maybe we want to block the merge for whatever reason. So we now have a place where security, developers, ops as well, are kind of all accessing this in one place. Now to lucky dip. Aha, I picked it right. So what happens if you want a more top level view? What's worth noting, I am still in my project right now. So this is going to be a bit granular. This is maybe if I'm an engineer on this project, or maybe if I'm looking specifically from security, but the security dashboard is one level up, which I'll show in a minute. What I can see here, I have vulnerability reports. So I can start to see some of the problems. So I've got critical. We always say in security, start with your critical. Just make sure you don't have any 10s in production. That's all we ask. Well, not all, but that's a very good starting point. We can, for example, filter by that. Maybe I want to look at only critical and you can see the other numbers change. Maybe I want to look at specific tools. So for example, if I only wanted to look at Dast, good news, no critical vulnerabilities in Dast. There might be in other places though. So what happens when I go into a vulnerability? So I can see one here. So I'm going to click in, and this is all automated by GitLab. We provide all the information for you. So we have a short description. So there's untrusted user input. It's a reflected cross-site scripting vulnerability. We can see severity, tool. We can also see where, which is very useful because especially if you're dealing with an application with a lot of problems, you kind of want to see where you're going, any identifiers, and you can even get security training as part of this. So if I click into view training, we then leave GitLab. We're going to a company called Secure Code Warrior. This is actually where I used to work before GitLab. And I'm going to continue as a guest. So I know that my problem was reflected cross-site scripting. And I'm going to pick Python because I'm an ex-Python developer. And I'm going to enter the game mode. So I've gone from GitLab, from being in a vulnerability, to all of a sudden, I now have gamified security training. So in this example, I'm in Secure Code Warrior, I can see I have, this is my problem. And I can then start to look, within the file. I'm like, okay, is it in this code block? Is that where the vulnerability is? Or maybe it's over here in this line. So I'm just going to click this one. Yeah.
This Python project, does it have anything to do what's showing up in GitLab part? It's two different repos.
Two different. So this is a different, you can see at the top, this is Secure Code Warrior, where I used to work. We now have an integration, which is awesome, and they create their own coding examples. This code that you're seeing is nothing to do with GitLab, but it's just an example of how you can empower your developers to learn about security, because maybe I think, it's in line 6, I hit next, and then, oh no, I didn't get it right because actually, this is my explanation. And then I can continue with the challenge. So what will happen is the developer, they might be like, what's reflected cross-site scripting? And then they will go to the other skill code warrior to be able to understand. So I'm working in development. Maybe I might be an engineering manager right now. And I'm like, okay, we need to fix this. I can then start the cycle again. So I can create an issue. I can, I've got the title, I have all the identifiers. Maybe I want to assign it to an epic. Maybe this needs to be fixed in the main release, for example. And I can create an issue and then start this process again. So now I'm back in product management. Maybe I want to assign this to a particular sprint. And then I can, so for example, let's fix this. #patch Tuesday. And then I can comment it, I can assign others. So we have this element of collaboration where developers, security, ops, etc., are all accessing within one place. So I've mainly been focusing, on the developer and security. What is worth noting within the platform, we do have a lot of other stuff. We've got, security. If you want to look at where we're deploying, we're optimized for Kubernetes, but we can deploy to any cloud. We can have a look, for example, at our environments here, and we can see what's in production versus kind of what's on our review apps. We can do package registry. So if you need somewhere to host your containers, your packages, or your infrastructure, you can start doing monitoring on this. Analytics. So this is quite an interesting one. I don't know if anyone, actually, I'll do a little show of hands. Has anyone heard of the DORA metrics before? Okay. Well done, Shane. He's not paid to be here, I promise. So the DORA metrics, it stands for DevOps Research. I want to say Institute, but that would be an I. Anyway, DevOps Research, maybe Academy. And there are 4 metrics that are important for DevOps. So when I mentioned the book Accelerate, this is what Accelerate is about. It's about these 4 metrics. So deployment frequency. How often are you deploying? So I think of it like an elephant. If you're going to eat an elephant, I'm not because I'm vegan, but how would you do it? You break it into chunks. So the same with deployment frequency. It's actually a proxy for batch size because like I said earlier, if you're deploying with 500 changes and it goes wrong, that's going to be a bit of a mess. But if you deploy 3 changes every 2 hours, you're going to eat that vegan elephant a lot quicker. Similar lead time for changes. This is how long from when you commit to when it's in production. And in Accelerate, they looked at different performers. The elite performers, it's hours. The not so elite, it's 6 months. So imagine if, for example, if you're working for a retail company and they want to make a change to their website for the summer sale, but it doesn't get updated till Christmas, that's going to cause, some friction, and you start to lose market share and competitive advantage. Those two are about throughput, how fast, how quick, how everything. But with that, we want stability. So we've got two other ones, time to restore service. So when something does go wrong, how quick? I think everyone knows, especially from the more social media that the world use. But when Twitter or Facebook and Instagram, Meta, when they go down, everyone knows. So imagine they usually restore things within hours, which is really good. But if they started taking weeks or months, would we still use those social media challenges, or would we move? And the final one, I didn't actually know this was a thing, but then I learned about it. I was like, that makes sense. So change failure rate. Every time you make a change, how often do you have to do a rollback or a burst? How often is it a problem? Because naive me was like, oh, it's always going to be fine, but no. And what they found, the elite performers, 0 to 15%, the low performers, about 60%. So what that means is every time you make a change, or 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. So if you're using multiple tools, if you've got project management over here, that's where you're doing your ideas. And then you've got CI, and then you've got all your security tools, and then you're using something else to CD. These metrics can be really hard to track. But using GitLab, it's a lot easier. So a couple of final things I just wanted to show on security, because so far we've been very project focused. If I go to, now I'm going to go more top level. So now instead of looking at just my Node.js project, now we have a little bit of everything. So this is actually across my entire estate. And this can be very useful for tracking. For example, I can see this isn't good. I'm logging in and my all my vulnerabilities are up, which is not something that we want to have. And if I look at the security status, I can then see, I've got 3 projects that are getting an F being bad. So I was in the Node.js before, but I'm going to have a look in Spring. This is one of my Java applications. And I can now see, if I go to the vulnerability report, we have a lot of vulnerabilities that we want to fix here. And the other things we can do whilst we're in a project, we can also, if we need to, we can look at the dependency list. What open source are we using? Also, what vulnerabilities are associated with that? If you want to set up on-demand scans, so for example, this is a good example would be dynamic application security testing, or deciding how often you want to scan it as well. Licenses, this was my story about the, I haven't set it up, but the airline boarding tickets. You need to make sure what open source licensing you're using. Policies, so this is approval rules. We used to call it approval rules, now it's called this. I don't think many people had done security before, so we'll just do it together. This is a way that you can set up a scan. So for example, this one, I'm going to call my critical scan. And it's quite easy logic. If container scanning, or you could do select all, if all scanners find more than 0 critical newly detected, so what that means, if there's 1 or more bugs, then we not require approval. And we can do it from a group. So my group is called Stefania Demo, or maybe we want to target specific people, and then I'm going to target myself. So we can then see at both levels, because especially with security, we don't want to single out one person to have to approve everything. We can have more of a group. And you can see it has a YAML preview here. And then I can configure it with a merge request. It then sits as a configuration policy within a different project as well. So it's all easy to use. And then I think there was one other thing I was going to use. Oh yeah, audit events. So this is great for compliance. Who is doing what, where and how. And finally, just getting things configured. So for example, if you want to use a different SAST or DAST, configure your dependency scanning. If you want to do compliance, how you do the compliance, and also the training, which I mentioned before. This is the end of my demo. We just have, I think, one more slide to do, and then I will pause for questions and maybe pause for breath, but I haven't decided. So with GitLab, we rebranded recently, I think it was about a month ago. We are one DevOps platform because you have one interface, so one UI for everyone to access, one data model, so it's all very simplified, and with that permissions model, so you can do role-based access control. One value stream, so those 4 metrics I talked about, so that you can then track the way that you create value via technology. One set of reports plural, there are lots of different reports, but you have them all in one place, all easily exportable. Something we've talked a lot about today, one spot to secure your codes. And really with that, it's empowering the developers to be able to do this. One location to deploy to any cloud, and one place for everyone to contribute. So yes, thank you so much for listening, everyone, in real life and also virtually. I have my contact details there. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, happy to take them now. Yeah.
Sounds a bit like one ring to rule them all, actually.
I've been meaning to say that to my marketing department because I also thought that as well. So yeah, if you want to come chill in Mordor, it's improved a lot in the last few thousand years.
You said Visual Studio VS Code integration.
So I read that today. So I'll be honest, I scanned the blog that's been released. I could probably find it now. But I read the first half. VS Code is actually open source. Our developers in GitLab have worked on integrating VS Code into our web IDE. So just as a kind of recap, the web IDE looked, it's an IDE within an application. So for example, if I go, let's go this way. Okay.
Because I remember when Microsoft came out with Visual Studio Online, and I got really excited. I thought, oh my God, I can log on and there be my development environment. And it wasn't.
Well, this is recorded, isn't it? I should just be politically correct. I was going to say, well, we're not Microsoft. But yeah, this is the web IDE that we have. And actually, what was quite interesting, the backstory of us building the web IDE. So we really believe in dog fooding at GitLab. Our entire organization uses GitLab. So for marketing, for events, we use issues. We get all of our marketing department to learn Markdown to be able to create issues. And what they were originally using, they were using Atom. So you can imagine the whole marketing department committing from Atom, finding it a bit stressful. So then this was one of the improvements in that we built a web IDE so that you can, if you don't want to log in via your IDE, you can do it via the web. I do also say, I don't know if I said it today, sorry, but if you don't want to use the web IDE, if you want to use your own IDE, fine, go for it. It still works in the traditional way. You can still git commit. It will still be hosted here. So we offer different options for developers. Yeah.
Hi, the test cases you showed, did you manually set them up, or does GitLab give you test when it creates the project? That's
a good one to show. So what I showed you, the pipeline, I should have talked about it really. Bear with me. What it is, it's a YAML file. So we have something called auto DevOps. So it's a CI YAML file, and then we select auto DevOps. And what it does, it declares the stages. So we can see build, test, and this one we're doing incremental rollouts. And then what happens is it includes some templates. If I scroll a bit further down, here we can see it might be a bit small, but this one, for example, is deploy to ECS. So this might be where you select your path. This one here, security dependency scanning. So if you want to use a different scanner, this is where you can start to make the changes. So everything I showed you today is plug and play. I haven't really done that much extra work other than navigating the platform. But if you do want to make changes specific to your organization, you can do it here. Similarly, if you want to change the stages of the pipeline, if you want to have a different model of deployment, you can do it all there. So it's all, we've got both options, plug and play, and then customizable as well.
Another question also tied to that. Do we need an enterprise license to use those, or can we use it? So
GitLab security, pretty much all the functionality is ultimate. So that's the paid for version. Although in the latest release, 15.0, we are introducing container scanning to all tiers. So you can scan your containers. In terms of with this pipeline, I think Auto DevOps is actually available at all tiers, but what you'll find is you won't have the security scanning. And it is possible to have security scanning if you do have the free model, but what will happen is it will usually present itself as JSON. So one of the main benefits you get with Ultimate is that you can get it in a friendly format within the merge request, so developers can easily see, open the vulnerability, do the security training, create an issue, and it's all seamless. Cool. Yeah.
So those security scanners that you showed now, are they integrated into the GitLab Enterprise?
Yes. So we use a lot of scanners that people are familiar with. So I know for container scanning, I think it's Claire or Triby. I can't remember which one the SAST is. DAST is ZAP. So OWASP ZAP. I think SCA varies. So some of it's Gymnasium, some of it OWASP DepCheck. So we integrate kind of the best in the open source scanners. But if you want to use a particular one, if you're really tied to checkmarks or barcode, please feel free to include it.
One of our developers was asking me if I thought that everybody would have to start learning YAML. And I said, well, I sure as hell am gonna have to start learning YAML.
Yeah, I learned Java originally. That was my background, and then I even did a bit of C. I did not like C, but I then moved to Python, and maybe it's because I'm a Python developer. I quite like the syntax of YAML because it's it's quite clear. Yeah, you've got what's your key, what's your value. Different stages. So I think it's a lot friendlier. We're not asking people to learn Java from scratch. And if you forget a squiggly bracket or a little semicolon, you'll be on fire. Also, what's worth noting, we have loads of examples. So like I've mentioned the templates, we've got loads of different ones. So depending on what you want to do. Similar, we have a really awesome open source community. I haven't looked that much in Stack Overflow, but I know that we have resources. So if there's specific things you're trying to achieve, maybe you want to do AWS EKS deployment specifically, we have a guide for that. So there is a lot of information out there. So yes, you might have to learn to read YAML, but hopefully you can copy and paste from secure locations.
If people are interested in finding out what's up and coming with GitLab, is there an available roadmap somewhere? Yes.
Great question. I didn't actually ask you to say that, but it's a great segue. So we're about to release version 15.0, and with that comes some breaking changes. So at every major milestone, we'll make some changes. We actually have a webinar coming up, and then our CEO will be there, a lot of the product, and they're going to be talking about everything that's coming up in the next year. So in all the 15s. So I have to double check the day. I can probably find it on my screen. But that is coming up very soon. And I would, if you are interested in GitLab, I really recommend attending that because that will give you an understanding exactly of what's coming up. Another thing worth noting with GitLab, we're very transparent in that our product roadmap, if you want to see what epics we're working on or help us prioritize our workload, our roadmap is public. So you can actually go on and see, for example, I know I'm very excited. We're going to be working on an open source firewall. So if anyone has worked with X-Ray, Sonatype firewall, what's happening, anything you're getting from NPM or Maven Central, let's block it. Let's block the bad stuff before it comes in. So we will be working on that. That's something I'm very excited about. If you are also excited, you can go to the epic, you can give a little thumbs up emoji, you can comment, and it's great when I do it, but when external people do it, it's even better, and it can help us to prioritize. So if you want to have a look at our roadmap, our most of our stuff, pretty much all of our stuff is already on the internet.
I hate to bring up the H word, but is there anywhere you can get a good comparison between GitHub and GitLab?
I know that we used to have stuff on the internet. I can obviously be biased.
No way.
GitHub and GitLab both, originated from Git, as in source code management. And then what you find is, it's almost like I look at the left side of the screen, we are end-to-end DevOps. So for example, for CI, you have GitHub Actions, we have pipelines. GitHub Actions are actually Azure pipelines because when Microsoft acquired by, GitHub got acquired by Microsoft. They just rebranded as your pipelines, and that became GitHub Actions. You have other elements. So for example, with us, the security is all integrated. With GitHub, you have to go to the marketplace, and then you have to download each kind of integration, and then when integrations start kind of clashing with each other. But then when it comes to kind of the more, the ops side as well, if you're like looking at environments, if you're deploying, if you're doing value stream assessments, that's definitely, where we make a difference. If all you're looking at is source code management, then that is often when I'm in a customer call and I'm like, is that really what you're interested in? Because apples and apples. But if you're looking at end-to-end DevOps, I think my last slide where it says one ring, then that's where GitLab really comes into its essence.
Well, by the way, for anybody who's interested, I know that Stefania's got quite a lot of material that's available on the next different videos and YouTube presentations just given before. We'll be hanging around for a while, so if anybody wants to have a chat. Otherwise, I guess we're going to bring this to a close. I'd like everybody to give a big, warm, wonderful applause. This job, well, not really a job since I don't get paid, but is that I get to meet my security heroes, and it was wonderful to meet you, Stefania.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming.
We in OWASP Stockholm, we're looking for more active members, people who want to engage with us. So please get in touch with us. And unfortunately, I saw that somebody had got in touch with me and I hadn't been checking my OWASP email. I will get better at that, I hope. So thank you very much and enjoy. There's plenty of years left. Everybody online, thank you very much for being with us this evening, and we hope we'll see you at the next OWASP Stockholm event. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If anyone has any feedback, positive or negative, I'm always looking for constructive criticism. I know I speak quickly, so if anyone has other feedback, then